Welcome, everyone, to episode 11 of another Jags podcast. We're excited about the show tonight, talking Jaguars rookie minicamp, talking about legalized sports betting, and all this stuff in between. But before we get to all that, we want to welcome our cast of characters. Joey, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I actually am gambling on this evening as opposed to actually preparing for the night. I'm kind of just winging it, so we're going to see how that goes.
Okay, it should be fun. Jason, how we doing?
I'm doing good. I'm gambling on this evening on this basketball game. So is that bad to say, or
no? You can
say that.
Okay, it's
cool.
been said.
All right, cool.
It's
Boston
technically legal now, man.
It's legal now,
Yeah.
so get off my back.
All right, and Robert, how we doing?
Like Utah, I do not believe in gambling, so I came prepared.
All right, you're ready. Okay, and I'm too cheap to gamble, so it's a moot point for me altogether. And too neurotic as well. Before we get started with tonight's discussions, we want to remind everyone that we are on Twitter at Another Jags Pod. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast. And again, you can find us on all podcast platforms, including SoundCloud and iTunes. I want to thank everyone for listening tonight. It's May, not a lot of stuff going on in the world of football, but there is some things, and we are going to eke out every little bit of talk that we can about what's going on right now, and that happens to be Jaguars rookie minicamp has just wrapped up. And before we get into too much of the actual talk about what happened over the weekend with the rookie minicamp, if you weren't paying attention, if you were focused on the Players' Championship, or maybe just were going outside enjoying the weather, you may not have even known that the rookie minicamp happened. And that's kind of what leads to this question. Gentlemen, I ask you, is there anything to learn from rookies in a rookie minicamp?
Personally, I would say that you can't learn a lot about anybody in a t-shirt and shorts. I would say less about rookies. I'm not a big fan, man. It's not very interesting to me at all.
I like to read really far into things, like seeing the drills with Taven Bryan lining up on the outside of the edge on the drill, looking like he, coming off of the edge, which leads me to believe like maybe he'll be playing some edge this offseason, which is kind of exciting to think about because he only played really the 2 and 3 technique in college, and the fact that he may play on the edge just kind of excites me just a little bit. But the biggest thing about rookie minicamp is that I just pray that nobody gets injured.
That's right.
Because this is the time of year when Dante Fowler took that awkward step and he was out for the year. And we're still paying the price for that. And so is he. So that's the only thing I'm hoping for.
I mean, with that, that's a great point. I mean, is it beneficial to have it risking losing a stud like Dante Fowler?
I think it's more of a introductory step for the players to come in, get familiar with the coaches, see how they are, than it is actually really them. I mean, besides Dante Fowler getting hurt, I don't think it's really a heavy workout for them.
So it's kind of like getting acclimated to NFL life type
Yeah, I
of thing,
think it's
like
all
the
it
schedule.
is. I mean,
It's college orientation.
That makes sense.
Well, they talked about like DJ Chalk. I mean, he talked about how he got to meet Keenan McCardell, picking his brain, listen to him. So I mean, that kind of tells you. I mean, it's them learning the coaches, their new coaches, the new facility, and everything. I feel like it before they come in and do the full blown camp later on. So.
All right, before we go any further, I want to go back to Jason really quick and ask you, because I know what clip you're talking about with Taven Bryan, and I want to ask, how many times did you watch that clip?
Oh, between that clip and the hoop drill clip, where if you're not familiar with the hoop drill, that's where they literally put a large hula hoop on the field, and the defensive linemen have to run in a circle around the hoop to kind of show their balance and their ability to kind of run at an angle, probably 30 times or so. I mean, I love watching players do drills. That's why I love watching the combine, because I love those drills. Those drills are all super specific to each position. Seeing a guy like Taven Bryan, who didn't really have a lot of issues at UF jumping off sides, which you would think, because guys like Dante Fowler and even Yannick Ngakoue, they drew a lot of offsides calls because they're so antsy to jump off of the snap. And Taven Bryan did a great job. I mean, his first step is just freaky fast.
Yeah, for a guy his size, I was pretty surprised. Granted, it's in shorts, not against anybody, but still, he looked fast.
It's definitely promising. I mean, was it that, or they just had nobody to fill up the drill because the only other like edge rusher was from Jacksonville State?
Hey, why are you hating on Jacksonville State? That's where Ryan Perrilloux went, the LSU standout.
I don't even know who that
is. He's somebody.
That's deep. That's
the pride of Jacksonville State. I'm with Jason 110%. To me, rookie minicamp is all about no one getting hurt. And if you come out of it unscathed, then good on you. But it's hard to gauge Taven Bryan's ability when he's going up against a bunch of other rookies who more than likely aren't going to be in the NFL in a few months, So it's just hard. It's hard to take anything away from it, and I think that's why. That and the fact that it was held the same weekend as the Players' Championship here in Jacksonville, there just wasn't a lot of talk about it, and people just, kind of moved on already. So let me ask you this, though. Of all the rookies that have been drafted and or signed as undrafted free agents, which one do you think makes the greatest impact on the Jaguars this coming year? Not necessarily whether they start or not or anything like that, but which one makes the greatest impact for the Jaguars 2018?
I think there's actually a couple guys of the undrafted that will make a big difference. I'm a big fan of Quentin Meeks, cornerback out of Stanford. I really like the Jaguars rookie they signed out of Oregon State, Manasseh Hungalu, and I could be butchering his name, but I really, really like that guy. And this is going to be something, I'm going to tell you why I like him, and it's not something why I normally like people.
What position does he play?
He's a linebacker. Okay. And, it's no secret that I think we're incredibly thin at linebacker. But
I was going to say, I think you're just desperate to fall in love with a linebacker that's not Blair Brown.
Okay, and here's why I like this guy. This is really uncommon for me. He is super hyped. When he makes a play or someone makes a play, he is like super hyped after the play, jumping up and down, doing all kind of dances. And there's something to that that's going to fit in with our team.
Yeah.
Like when he starts doing that in camp and he's going to start mixing with Jalen and Tellen and Yannick and Dante Fowler, just our whole team is like that. And I think that attitude is going to just really, really fit in. So I'm really looking to those two guys to really be fitting in. If we're talking about rookies, I'll just take this moment. I don't know how big I am on DJ Chark, and I may just be over analyzing this because we have so much time in the offseason, but let me just read you his stats. 3 receptions a game last season. Not terrible. I mean, that's pretty bad, but what I'm about to tell you, his yards per game, he had 73 yards per game. That's pretty good on 3 receptions. I mean, he's a deep threat, but a deep threat in college. He had only 3 touchdowns all season. He had 2 punt returns all season. Not amazing. And I tried to watch some games of him. He had big drops in games. And he had games where it looked like he wasn't giving all effort on jump balls. I just was not impressed with him. But an undrafted guy that I was super impressed with was Alan Lazard out of Iowa State. He averaged 5.5 catches per game and had 72 yards per game. And he had 10 total touchdowns last year. I know he played in the Big 12 where they're pass happy. They don't play a lot of defense. I just think his game is going to translate. There's a lot of talk of him beefing up and turning into a tight end, which I wouldn't be that mad about.
But didn't the Jags, I heard that the Jags, one reason he decided to come here is because they said they weren't going to convert him into a tight end, because a lot of teams want to do that. He wanted to be a wide receiver, so they said, we're going to work with your wide receiver. Maybe they might change their mind.
Nowadays, I mean, the difference between a tight end and a wide receiver is marginal. I mean, even Austin Seferian-Jenkins, more times than not last season, lined up in the slot. So a couple plays he lined up. I mean, the difference between those two positions to me, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But, yeah, I think he could play wide receiver for sure. He's a big guy. He runs well after the catch. He has great, strong hands. I think he may be the player that shows out the most out of the undrafted rookies. And if we know anything about Caldwell, is he has a good eye for undrafted rookie receivers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't throw him a $40K signing bonus for nothing, and I think I agree. I mean, he fits what we don't have a lot more than Chark fits what we don't have. I mean, we've got a lot of smaller guys who are speedy and that can return, kickoffs, punts, whatever. So I agree. I think from a wide receiver standpoint, Lazard definitely might be a better prospect. The other undrafted rookie free agents, I actually kind of reached out to a guy I call my Miami scout, because the dude knows everything there is about South Florida high school football and everything. So he gave me some intel on D. Delaney as well as Casey McDermott. D. Delaney was a D2 prospect coming out of high school, and he transferred from Citadel to Miami and made the team his first year. So that's a lot to be said for that, to move up like that. Good work ethic. He got lost a couple times in the secondary, which you'd expect when you haven't been really coached up in that level. But he could flash. Also, Casey McDermott was a 4-star. He got really lost in the coaches' packages that they had for him until the final year when Rick came through, and he also had Stacy Cirrus. So I think that guy is probably the one would be my sleeper pick to make the team.
Nice work.
D. Delaney, his coverage skills, I think, are very, very subpar, but he might be the best tackling defensive back out of the group of undrafted rookies.
I mean, don't you think that would be a perfect fit for the nickel that we're missing, though? I mean, he doesn't really he's got everybody around him that would kind of make up for his,
I don't know about nickel, but a dime package or a substitute corner, I think maybe, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Especially in those cover ones where on obvious pass downs where really you're just kind of jamming up your outside receiver and setting the edge for, our defensive players that are spilling it outside. He's got a lot of work to do in the secondary, in my opinion. But his tackling is really, really good for sure.
Are we all in agreement that nickel corner is a concern going into the year?
Oh,
I know
absolutely.
Jason and I have said so.
No,
we all say that.
Absolutely.
What about Meeks? What do you guys think about him as a possible nickel corner?
Quentin Meeks is the guy from Stanford I was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think other than Lazard, Meeks was one of those guys that probably was expected to get actually drafted and not go undrafted. So, yeah, he's the guy that you expect to stand out in the group. So I think he's definitely the front runner from that standpoint.
Just another guy that didn't pop off on the stat sheet. And I know I'm always arguing against stats, but, the dude only had 2 interceptions last year. He had 61 total tackles last year. That's not bad. But you got to take into consideration that he was playing at Stanford, and the team, that schedule Stanford played last year was just riddled with terrible teams. And you would expect someone that played that schedule to really, really jump off of the stat sheet. But only 2 interceptions? That's tough for me.
It doesn't seem to me like there's anybody that's going to take DJ Hayden's place going into the year. It seems like he's the guy.
Which is sad because he's the lowest graded player on Pro Football Focus on our entire defense coming into this year.
Well, they're paying him like the guy, but at least they're bringing some younger guys in to kind of push him somewhat.
Kind of bringing people. They're not. They didn't stress it. They didn't draft a high corner. They're high in the draft. That is.
I think it's a major need for sure. Nickel corner, especially considering how much we play nickel. And considering how, injuries can happen. We were really fortunate, like we've talked about in the past, not having injuries to our outside corners. But, if one injury, now we're putting in a guy who's undrafted or putting in a guy who used to be a quarterback back there, It's,
yeah.
I personally think if we're talking about just for next season, who's probably going to do the strongest, I think DJ Chark is going to be probably the strongest. And the reason why I don't think a lot of these guys are going to get as much field time as he is going to get, and I feel like he's probably going to flash and you're going to see a couple of those big deep threat shots thrown at him. He comes down with a few. For the Jags fan base, it's going to be big. People are going to be watching that. Even if he doesn't come out down with a ton, I don't see Taven Bryan really doing a whole lot this season just because of our depth as it is. I think he's potentially could be a stud for us, but I just don't think he's going to get enough playing time this year to really show out. I think Chark is going to at least be able to get a few of those deep threats, and if he can pull down a few of them, that's going to probably do more than most of these guys because all these other guys are going to be depth, like deep depth. He probably has the best shot of actually being out there and getting the most reps.
Well, you just think about the fact, though, if he does drop a few of those chances that he gets, who's the next Keelan Cole out of this group?
That's true.
It's very possible it does happen. So, I think they are very fair about giving everybody an opportunity. I think they've shown that, which is the way it should be.
This coaching staff has also shown, though, if you make a mistake in game, they're quick to pull you. The games that Chris Ivory fumbled or Yeldon, Yeldon wasn't even active for the first half of the season because you couldn't show he could hold on to the football in the preseason. If this guy drops a ball, I don't know. He's got speed. Robert's right. He's got speed. He'll stretch the field. He'll open it up. But I think his biggest contribution is going to be on kick and punt returns.
Yeah, and I don't think he's our future number one person by any means.
No way.
I don't by any means. I just feel like he's going to be the guy that out of most of these rookies coming into this year, he's going to have probably the most opportunities to pull down a big deep ball. And then, if that happens, it's going to blow up. People are going to be wanting him nonstop just because, we haven't had that guy since Allen Robinson left.
I agree with Robert. I'm pretty high on DJ Chark. I think one, because the position itself is so undefined. We know Marquise Lee and Moncrief are the assumed 1 and 2. D.D. Westbrook, rookie, missed a lot of games last year. Keelan Cole had a good year. Can he do it again? There's just so many question marks to the wide receiver position. That is the position on the entire team that I'm absolutely 100% most fascinated by, because it just seems like there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think that is why Chark has a leg up, on, just like what Robert was saying, that he's got a leg up on the other rookies because there's more opportunity for him to have that. I think if I was going to go with another person, it probably would be Harrison at safety, just because kind of going with what Jason was saying about the guy from, was it Oregon you said? Or the guy whose name I can't pronounce?
Oregon
the
State.
linebacker, Oregon State.
Yeah.
He kind of plays with that same nasty mentality that the Jaguars defense carries. And, Church is getting a little up there in age, and I don't think he's going to take the position from him. But again, the defense was so healthy last year. There was hardly any injuries at all. The law of averages say that's probably not going to be the case this year. I certainly hope it is, but it may not be. And I could see Harrison getting in there getting some snaps.
And that's the other thing, like we talked about last week. But I mean, with Gibson and Church in there, our backups last year had a total of 30 snaps, I think we said.
30, it's like 35, 36.
Yeah, so I mean, like I don't think he's going to beat out Church. And I mean, he played solid last year. So I mean, it's going to be hard for him to squeeze in there and get as many reps as he's going to need to show out.
I just think injuries will lead to a lot of reps for Harrison because, I mean, these safeties, they're getting older, flying downhill, they're making tackles. They're gonna, they're probably gonna see. We saw safeties in last year that probably didn't need to be on the field at all.
Right.
So I think Harrison will get more snaps than and his coverage skills aren't awful. And if they brought him in over DJ Hayden on nickel package, would anyone really be that upset? Or if they went to dime package, which is 6 defensive backs and 1 linebacker, would you really be that upset if Harrison? And that's probably what they would do, to be honest with you, on obvious downs at the end of the game, 4th and 40 or 4th and 30, 4th and 20 at the end of the game. You're not going to see Telvin in there. You're going to see Ronnie Harrison in there, covering against the deep pass. So I know those are unlikely scenarios, but what about guys like Doran Miller, Reggie Hunter, small school D2 guy, Trey Herndon? Do anything for you guys?
Yeah, I was watching TPC.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask this again, and this will kind of really wrap up our rookie talk because, again, there's just not right now a lot to say about it. But let me ask you this. How many undrafted free agent rookies, obviously, if they're undrafted, will make the 53-man roster? When the season begins for that first week in September, the first game, will there be any undrafted free agents on the team? And if so, how many?
I'm going to go with one.
Which one?
I think it's a toss-up between Lazard or we're looking at McDermott.
I think you'll have 3. I think you'll have Alan Lazard. I think you'll see an offensive lineman kind of sneak in there, whether it be Tony Adams from NC State or Casey McDermott from Miami. I think you'll see an offensive lineman kind of sneak into that final 53-man roster. And Manassi Hangalu, linebacker from Oregon State. I've been way off on linebackers this whole year, obviously with Sky Moore. But I think that he's the type of guy that'll fit in. I think a guy that you may see sneak onto the practice squad is a guy like Tanner Lee, the quarterback from Nebraska. The new tight end we signed, Zach Conk, who's not a rookie, but he was on the practice squad for the Jets and the Texans last year, and he was a quarterback at Stephen F. Austin. He's 6'6", 240. So basically that's Cam Newton size if you're trying to think of someone who he looks like. And he's a big boy. A really good college stats passing. But, I mean, if he's stuck around for 2 years in the league, even jumping around to practice squads, I think a guy that big, maybe a guy that sneaks onto the practice squad.
That's one thing that kind of annoys me. I mean, a 6th-round pick of Tanner Lee, and then he might sneak onto the practice squad. Like, why? To answer the question, I mean, I think it's pretty much Lazard. I don't really know how many more of them are going to be able to sneak on there, but, I mean, that's just a little irritating to me. I mean, 6th round is. I mean, it's not.
It'll really, the biggest thing will be injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, how many injuries do we see? A lot of these guys will get thrown onto the practice squad, I think, and then one injury, and then we're calling them up.
Yeah.
I think one huge bonus so far is none of these guys have been arrested for off-the-field activities yet. So that's a plus. That's a plus.
Not yet.
Or do we want them to be? I mean, all of our other guys have been done pretty good.
Definitely was. Who was the guy on Last Chance U that we have?
Oh, yeah. If he's on Last Chance U, he definitely got arrested a few times.
Some DB. He's pretty good.
Definitely arrested.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 0 undrafted free agents make the team. There's not a lot of room on this team for there's just not. I mean, we talked about going into the draft, 3 or 4 holes to plug on the team, and we got, we made some drafts. I don't know. I mean, I guess Lazard may be it, but just because he seems to have the most hype. But at the same time, he didn't get drafted. So for some reason, all 32 teams, including the Jaguars, thought not enough of this guy to draft him. And so to me, that says something, that every scout in the entire league looked at him and said, "Nah, we're going to pass."
You could have said the same thing about Allen Hurns and Keelan Cole, though.
Yeah, but
I know. But, Hurns is gone, and Cole 1 year, and we'll see. And I'm not saying
Hurns is
he's
gone, but he's the number one at Dallas.
That's more by default than anything else.
I'm just saying, he is.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't know. There's just not a lot of room. A year ago, he makes the team without a doubt, but a lot can change in a year. We'll see.
I think a year ago he doesn't make the team.
Whose spot does he take?
Because you have Hurns and you have
I think he beats out Cole
going into the year, but I really am not sold on Dante Moncrief. The only thing that leads me to believe he's going to get playing time is how much he gets paid. And that really doesn't go as far as it used to with the salary cap we have nowadays, especially him being on a 1-year deal. He did not have a good year last year. And he was not that. And I know they didn't have they didn't have Andrew Luck, but there actually was a stat that came out that Jacoby Brissett was the most accurate deep passing quarterback in the league. So when it came to deep passes, he wasn't so terrible. We automatically discount Jacoby Brissett as being like a terrible quarterback.
I actually thought Brissett played pretty well last
year. His offensive line was
yeah.
terrible. And I mean, it's the same offensive line that pretty much ruined Andrew Luck. Dante Moncrief is just a guy to me. And I think he could easily get beat out by someone who's bigger, stronger, and faster than him.
Yeah, but because we paid him, though, we're not going to cut him. So
I don't say he's cut.
Yeah,
but see the field. I mean, Ivory.
But he would take the spot of Lazard.
Right.
Well, I know I said Lazard too, but in all honesty, I mean, who would he take the spot of as of now?
Moncrief. I mean, we saw D.D. Westbrook wasn't even playing the first 6 games of the season. He ended the year as probably a top 3.
But can we?
So just because the first 6 games of the year you don't see the guy doesn't mean he's won't establish.
But will he
himself.
be on the team in order to take his
We would
spot?
probably have to cut a receiver though, in order to bring him. I mean, we don't have to, but I mean that's a lot of receivers
You
to
could
have.
go into the season with 6 receivers. A lot of teams do that.
Yeah, it just seems like an excessive amount.
I mean, given the injury history we have at receiver, they probably will go into the season with 6 wide receivers.
And I think that's exactly
true.
why they did
Yeah.
that. Is last year going into the season, we said the same thing. Man, they're loaded at receiver. We've got tons, and then all of a sudden we're like, where the heck are we going to get receivers from? Hey, dude, sleeping in your car. Come on.
What about here's this curveball? We haven't even mentioned his name. What happens to Rashad Green this year?
He's still hanging on somehow, man.
I know,
that guy's
he's on the team.
He's like those things, the sandburrs you get stuck in your sock, man. Like, dude, he's always there, and he still has the ability. I mean, that guy's like never lived up to his potential, but there's so much potential.
When they drafted him, I was so excited because at FSU he never dropped a ball. He gets to the Jags and that's all he does. Then he gets hurt. He was never hurt at FSU. So I mean,
he's still on the roster for a reason at this point, though. I think. I mean,
maybe just because he's cheap. Yeah, I mean they're not paying him very much.
Is it really that hard to believe that Alan Lazard beats out Jadon Mickens for his roster spot?
No, not at all. I mean, I think Keenan Marcardell is like in a great position right now. I mean, you got what do you knock how I said it, James?
Yeah,
Is
that
that
French?
can't go unsaid. Keenan Marcardell.
I think that's French.
from where he's
You have
from,
the
man.
Beauty and the Beast candlestick over here talking about Keenan Marcardell.
Oh man!
So back
Everyone looked at me when you said that. What are you gonna say, James?
So back to the point, though. Like he's got to be.
It's like
loving
putting a
it.
kick me sign on your own back.
He's got to be loving it, like seriously though, because there's so much speed in that locker room. I mean, yes, a lot of them are untested, but they all have wheels, man. And at wide receiver, you can't coach speed. He can coach routes. He can coach all the other stuff. So I think he's got to be pumped going into the season, and that's exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a chance that he makes it, Lazard I'm talking about, but I think there's a chance that he doesn't as well. And I think it's a good sign when a player of his caliber, granted he didn't get drafted, but doesn't make the team. I think that speaks to depth. But again, Marone and Joey, you said this, I think last week, this coaching staff, this regime doesn't play favorites once the offseason training starts. If you show out, you'll make the team. And if Jason's right about Moncrief, if he's not the guy, then hey, I guess they owe him $7 million, and he can go do whatever he wants with it.
No harm, no foul.
No harm, no foul.
Jets are paying Josh McCown $10 million for basically the same thing. To be
Yeah.
a guy they're not going to have it play very much.
What about Richardson? I mean, I know we weren't crazy about him, but I mean, he might get a good bit of rotational work in too, especially if we're not staying super healthy. So
I think he's going to challenge Can for right.
I mean, and all of us have pretty much said we're not Can fans. So I mean, does he take his spot almost?
I think Ken had an off year last year. I mean, if you look at the year before, I think he played much better. I do think that Richardson pushes him to play his best, which is what's best for the team. But I definitely think you're going to see Can most of the year.
I think Tyler Shatley is a so much better player than Will Richardson. And I think if there's anyone that's going to push Can, it should be Shatley. When Shatley was playing last year, the offensive line didn't miss a beat at all. And he played center and guard.
I was going to say, isn't he technically the backup center? On the depth
guard,
chart.
Only because they felt like they had a better look with Linder. No one else could give Linder the flexibility to move over to guard besides Shatley at center. And Linder probably is more valuable as a guard in our zone run offense than he is at center. So I just think Shatley's skill set allowed him to move over. I'm a big Tyler Shatley fan, and I think he should get, I think he is a way better player. I'm not a big fan of Will Richardson. I've made that known on previous podcasts. Just hasn't shown me anything on film that makes me think he's going to really help us. He's decent in pass pro. He has I've seen him against subpar college defensive ends look okay. Wasn't that great against the run? I don't know. Like I said, he's more of a guy who takes up space than he is a guy who gives you anything blocking wise.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I can't sit here and say I know a lot about him. I think I just like him because I was desperate for the Jags to draft an offensive lineman somewhere, and they finally, in the 4th round, got him. So I'm kind of, linking arms with him to hope, and hoping that he does something good for the team.
And like you said on a previous podcast, you made a good point. If Marone, who's offensive line coach, believes in him, there's something to be said for that. So
yeah, I think Marone and Coughlin both have an eye for the big boys in the trenches. And look, they went and had a private workout last year with Cam Robinson. Teams passed on him. They grabbed him at the beginning of the 2nd round, and he had a great year, rookie year at left tackle, which is not an easy place to have a rookie year. It's not a very forgiving position for a rookie. So yeah, I have some hope that they know better than we do in terms of Richardson. We'll see. Listen, I love the fact that we're not relying heavily on rookies this year. I think that's a good place to be for a team, for a franchise, when you are not banking. I mean, think about it last year. It was Fournette, and people were freaking out like, this guy's a game changer. We don't have that, and that's okay. That's a good thing that you don't. I remember it said when we, a few years ago when we were just at the bottom, we had all these rookies playing. I mean, everyone on the field. Tony Baselli was saying, he was talking to somebody at the College Football Hall of Fame inductions when he was getting inducted. What you get with rookies on the field is losses, And so if we don't have a lot of rookies on the field, that's a good thing. We have experience instead. We have young experience. We have the best of both worlds. We have young veterans on the field. I love that. So let the rookies sit back, be backups, learn, and then in a year or two when they're groomed, then they can come and show us what they got.
The reason why I'm so big on Hungalo is most teams carry 6 linebackers into their active roster. Most teams will carry 6 linebackers. As of now, our starting 6 are Telvin Smith, Miles Jack, Blair Brown, Lorente McCray, Donald Payne, and the newly drafted Leon Jacobs. So outside of Telvin Smith and Miles Jack, anyone on that list excite you or make you think they should even be on the field? I mean, it's between Blair Brown and Lorente McCray.
No, I'm curious to see what the coaches think of Blair Brown, though. I mean, he's pretty unknown. They don't say a lot about him, but he didn't play
a lot of snaps last year.
I think McCray got way more time than he did he not?
Well, McCray is better in coverage, so he was able to flex you out on passing downs and things like that. Blair Brown, I mean, because of Puzz, didn't play a lot.
Well, I mean, this is all just the build-up for the pause.
Yeah, hashtag
bring him back
pause.
reunion. I mean, it's getting evident now.
I think it's gaining momentum.
I think it is somewhere, someplace.
We've had a couple tweets.
Yeah.
Any from pause?
Not yet.
Not yet.
He's still spending time with his kids.
But no, I mean, seriously, I wonder what are they thinking about Blair Brown, because it seems to be that the foregone conclusion is that he's going to be the starting linebacker along with Jack and Smith. So.
I mean, there's no one else.
They must think the guy's ready. I mean, they see him day in, day out. They must think he's made that leap.
He barely played last year. I mean, I think he had like 30 or 40 snaps.
So I agree.
He's fresh.
He played a lot of special teams, but I mean, that's what those guys do, is they play special teams. I don't know, man. I've made it evidently clear that I am concerned about our linebacker.
You have made that abundantly clear.
I mean, if the coaches don't know by now that I feel that way, then they're not listening.
Hey, we could have had Harold Landry. We could have traded up in the second.
They're listening.
again, I'm just going to fall back on the fact that
They're all laughing about how Joey pronounced McCardell, too.
hey, Jason
Gerard.
says Center, and nobody says anything. I say McCardell, and everybody freaks out. I'm just going to go back to the fact that this group has not let me down in the past couple of years. That they have a plan, it's working. So I'm just going to have to trust that until it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of my whole point, and I agree. It's like they must know something that we don't.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see what that is.
I hope they do.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Sometimes coaches and GMs get a little too arrogant for their own britches. We see it happen all the time in
That's
sports.
true too.
and we've had several good years now of good drafts. I mean, it could happen. We could have a bad year.
I'll say that.
To me, the rookie minicamp is like, at first thing, it's like, okay, it's over now. We're one step closer to actual football stuff. So we'll see what happens. We have OTAs, voluntary workouts starting here in a little bit. We'll see a little bit more from our rookies, see what they can do. We're going to take a break really quick and come back with a discussion on legalized sports betting and see how that unfolds. I think we could talk about that for a little while. So, yeah, we'll be right back to talk about that. We'll see you in a minute on another Jags podcast.
All right, welcome back to another Jags podcast, episode 11. Boys, can you believe we've made it 11 episodes in the off-season?
It's pretty incredible.
That's why we're the number one off-season Jags podcast out there. You will not find a podcast with more episodes in the off-season than you will with ours. And you can find those podcasts on iTunes, SoundCloud, and now I just found out Google Play and Stitcher. What Stitcher is, I have no idea, but apparently it's somewhere you listen to podcasts. And also make sure to follow our...
The kids love it.
The kids love it. Make sure to follow our social media accounts. You can find us on Twitter at Another Jags Pod or on Instagram and Facebook at Another Jags Podcast. And we've really been picking up steam lately, so we really appreciate you would give us a follow and give us your feedback. Let us know what questions you have, what you want us to talk about. A lot of what we talk about on here is from you guys telling us what you want to hear about. And in the off season, there's not a lot going on. When there's not a lot going on, we want to talk about what you guys want to hear. So with some of the biggest news going on with not just the Jaguars, but with the entire National Football League, the Supreme Court voted in favor of the state of New Jersey 6-3, saying it was unconstitutional for the federal government to call betting on sports illegal. So we kind of want to talk about what that means, what that can mean for the Jaguars, and what that can mean for really the state of Florida. Because what that meant is that really gave the power back to the states. The states versus the federal government is literally the oldest political argument in the United States between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, fighting between state power and federal power. And the Supreme Court legislation voted in favor of giving that power back to the states. So that's going to look different from state to state. But before we kind of get into what that's going to look like for the state of Florida, I just want to ask you guys, what's one game this season the Jaguars are playing that you would bet the house on that they're going to win?
I'll start this one off, and I will say I think it's week 4. Yeah, week 4 against the Jets. Home game, redemption game, and I also think by then, if he doesn't start week 1, I think Sam Darnold will have taken the reins as starting quarterback, and I hope and pray that that's the case because our defense will eat him alive. And so it's tough to find one that you would bet the house on, but to me, that's the one that I would roll with. Jets at home, redemption game, possibly rookie quarterback. It has all the makings for an absolute slaughter. That's what I would put all my chips on the table for.
To me, looking at the schedule, it's an absolute easy pick. I'm going to go with the Jags versus the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh,
really?
In the Super Bowl?
Oh, no, preseason game too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
All kidding aside, I'm going to go with the...
That was good kidding, too.
Yeah, it was. The second week, I'm going to go Jags-Titans. I think that with this team, their swagger, just their wanting to dominate, that they are not going to let that happen again, and they're going to make that a statement game.
I hope so. I so hope you're right.
I do, too. I'm just calling out my lock just so I can get it out there and hope it just happens.
Are we going easiest game or best payout?
You're betting the house.
Just betting the house?
Yeah.
Okay. Easiest bet, I'm probably going to go Redskins in week 12. If I want to make money, though, I'm going with the Patriots. I think we're going to come back, and I think we're going to be underdogs on that one. We're going to come back out with just with a fire on us, and I think we're going to beat them down. So if I was wanting to make the big bucks, I'd go with the Patriots pick.
Can I get a prop bet that Dante Fowler puts Brady in the hospital?
Sure.
Sure. Now, can that be while the game is not happening?
Sure.
Okay.
In the parking lot with his
It's
car?
Fowler we're talking about
There we
here.
go.
If he tells him to slow down, there's no telling what'll happen.
Does Brady wear glasses?
It
Just
really,
give him a grocery bag. He'll throw him down.
it blows my mind how none of you guys are saying the most obvious win of the entire season. The worst team on our schedule,
The Giants?
the
No,
New
the
York
Colts.
Giants. We play in week 1, so any improvement that the Giants made in the offseason isn't even come to fruition in week 1 yet. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Their best player on their entire team is a rookie. So the fact,
Besides
it was Odell, yeah, whatever. But again, he hasn't played in a year. So Odell hasn't played in a year. Saquon Barkley's never played in the league. Week 1 at the Giants, I think the Jaguars slaughter them. I think that's the easiest game on the entire schedule.
I would have said that one, but I'll take a home game over a road game if you're talking about money.
It's the Giants, man.
I think the Giants. I think the Giants is a trap game, man.
I'm a
trap
little
game.
with Joey on that one. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. There's something to me that is a little scared about. Not scared. That's not. But concerned. Concern is a better
They have
word.
no defense. They have no offense.
I like the 2 quarterback system that they're running right now. So.
They should. That'd probably help them better. I mean, they have nothing. They have no talent on their team. They ranked bottom in the league on both offense and defense last year. No amount of offseason money spent or drafting is going to help you in week 1 against the best defense in the league. I'm sorry, it just won't. So I think that's a given. If the Giants score a touchdown in that game, I'd be surprised. That's a bet that's a prop bet I would take. How many points will the Giants score? Under 6.
Like I said, trap game.
I like Jason's confidence.
Oh man,
It's making me feel better about that game.
I'd say it's a trap game if it was like week 15 or 16. That's a trap game.
Dude, there's no way that Eli plays anywhere close to as bad as he did last year.
It's not about Eli. It's about what he has around him.
Beckham's back.
Beckham's
The
back. It's his
best
first
receiver
game
the
back
league,
in 2
possibly.
years.
I think
he
they got
hasn't
better-
played in a game.
You
in
may
2
have drafted the best running back in the league. I mean,
He's a rookie. I mean,
But they got a better
Rookie running
they got
backs
a-
can come in and make an impact immediately. What they don't, I think they have a good quarterback. They have obviously a stud receiver. I can't wait for that matchup between Beckham and Ramsey. I think Barkley's going to be a great player. The problem that they have is they don't have an offensive line.
I think they shored that up some in
is
the
going
draft,
to
though.
be
Or
that's
defensive
going to be
line.
tough.
or linebackers, or defensive backs.
I think Barkley can do something in week 1, but any offensive lineman that I don't know. I didn't follow the Giants draft, so I don't,
they signed Nate Solder from the Patriots.
okay. So they basically did
That's
nothing
it.
on offensive
Yeah.
line. That is where the Jags are going to beat them down is on the line. Our defensive line versus their offensive line is a total mismatch. But if we're talking about betting money, which I do not do, because I don't have a lot of it to begin with, is I'm going to go with a home game against a possible rookie quarterback. I'll take that all day.
Well, since we're talking about betting, the Vegas came out with how many games they thought the Jags were going to win next year, and they put the line at 9 games.
Terrible.
So that's 9-7, which is a game decrease from last year. So what are y'all's thoughts on that? Would you bet on the over of that or the under of that?
Well, I already said they're going 10-4 next year. So what is the overpay on that?
I don't know about the overpays on that.
I would definitely go with the over.
All day.
I think we would all say the over, right?
all day long.
We're homers, though, to be fair. But I think even with this, I mean,
That's
it's
an
Vegas.
incredibly safe
Vegas is
line.
Vegas for a reason.
That's about to say. I mean, they are. The Vegas is what people look to. Did you know you can bet on WWE outcomes?
Well, yeah. I
Did you
mean,
know
you
that?
don't
Yeah.
know. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Someone does though.
You bet on
I
everything.
mean,
Yeah,
wow.
Vegas.
But isn't that crazy? Yeah, exactly. Isn't that crazy though? I don't know. That's a side point, but that's crazy. All right, so you guys have anything else to add about the over under before I get into?
I think we're well over 9 wins. I will take that bet.
Yeah, absolutely. I do too. I mean, barring an injury to Blake.
Yeah, I mean, you always have that little asterisk, but everyone's healthy, or for the most part, everyone's healthy. We're winning more than
Even
9
if
games.
Blake's
Come on.
injured, I mean,
we
if
are
you-
winning more than 9
If you
games.
ground and pound with Fournette and Yeldon, we're still probably winning more than 9 games.
Because he was injured half of last season, so I guess it depends
But
on how
he
bad
played,
he was injured.
though.
There's not one game on the schedule that scares me. I agree with Robert. I think we're gonna beat the Patriots pretty bad in week 2. I think that's gonna be an incredibly fun game to watch.
The problem with the Patriots is I think that we have the potential to get out-coached like we did in the AFC Championship game, regardless of the talent on the field, because they've shown, regardless of their talent, they can out-coach you. They can take the best part of your game.
They can't out-referee us in our
That's
stadium.
true. They
can't
can.
out-referee.
Hey, don't sell them short. But
That's true.
I think back to the way they played the Rams in the Super Bowl in either 2001, 2002, I don't know. But, I mean, their game plan, they took Marshall Faulk out of the game. And that's what they did. And you look back, and Belichick said on every single play, we're going to chip Marshall Faulk coming out of the backfield. I mean, that's something that you don't see coaches do. But a guy like Belichick will just game plan you out of it. A team, I mean, that was one of the greatest offenses of all time, and the Patriots just totally eliminated them. It's that kind of thing that you can get outcoached in the NFL. It's hard to get outcoached in other leagues, but in the NFL, you can get outcoached. No matter what the talent disparity is, I think there's always the potential that you're going to lose to New England as long as Bill Belichick is at the helm. If I'm saying, the Giants, I think, is a guarantee. I think the Colts are going to be pretty trash again this year, too. So any of those Colt games, I think we'll be able to pick up pretty easily.
I think, Marone and most coaches talk about a football season in terms of quarters. They don't you want to win the quarter so 4 games at a time. I think the Jags are 4-0 after the first quarter. I think they win the first 4 games.
That's bold.
Well, we got the Giants. We already said that one.
But then you got the Titans who swept us in the
Joey's betting the house on that one.
Okay, 3 of our first 4 games. Those first 4 games were teams that beat us last year.
Those first 4 games, each one of us picked one of those to bet the house on. So if we're all right, we're 4-0 and we're rich.
But I picked the one that's obvious. The next 3 teams beat us last year.
Oh. The Jets beating us last year was a total joke. They had 2 ridiculous runs that basically, and I don't want to even get into that game.
I'm with you.
I'm in a good mood right now.
I'm with you, but the Chiefs?
That's the 5th game. That's
Okay,
the 5th game.
You're right.
I'm not going that far.
I don't know. I can see us going 2-2 in the first 4 and then making a run after that.
4-0.
Because the Titans, man.
I'll be honest with you, and I hate myself for
too.
saying this, but the Titans game causes me more concern than the Patriots game. Honestly. Just because of what Joey has said a million times. Because they have our number. Just like we have Pittsburgh's number.
And we play them twice.
If the Titans have our number, then the Patriots have our number.
No, because we don't play them enough. We don't have a history with them. We beat Pittsburgh 2 times last year. We beat them on the road in the playoffs the last time we were in the playoffs. There's a history there. I don't have that with New England. We beat New England last year. We beat them. I'm sorry.
New England added Joey's favorite player in the league, Sonny Michel.
That's true.
Michelle might rip us apart.
Oh man, you guys are giving running backs too much credit, man.
Y'all, you mean Joey? He's the only one. He's the only one banging that drum. The Sonny Michel drum.
Yeah. All right. Well, so let's take a look at how this new legalization of sports betting, and not even really legalization of sports betting, but really just it declared the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992 unconstitutional. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, is basically this basketball player who became a senator, and I think it was either Rhode Island or one of those northeastern states that gives us problems, lobbied for a law that made gambling illegal in sports because he said it would take away from the legitimacy of sports. Do you guys think that making betting on sports takes away from the legitimacy of sports?
No. Big no. I mean, I don't know how it can. I mean, people can say all they want about
what do you mean? I mean, refs fixing games?
That happened. That happened even when you couldn't gamble. I mean, that's a northeastern mob thing.
But now that it's legal, is it going to be more prevalent?
No, I think now that it's legal, there's going to be more government oversight on these things that can cause all of these things to virtually, be much harder to do. We already see point shaving in the NBA. That's already happening.
We saw it last night.
Exactly. So,
Golden State and Houston.
It being legal is not going to change that.
225.5 points. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you kidding me?
This is the only way that these things happen. It's a mob. Literally a mob thing. And that happened in the past, and it could probably be happening today. I only see this as being shoring up that probably is going to be harder to do. There's going to be way more oversight on it now than there ever has been.
I do think the more people that are involved in the gambling side of it, as far as the average Joe putting bets on games, the spotlight is more on whether stuff's going on that shouldn't be. But for anybody to think that everybody's not betting now that really wants to, or everybody is, that there's not game fixing going on right now, you're kind of stupid. It's definitely happening right now. I don't think this is going to have a major change on that either way, positive or negative. So, I'm all for it. Why not?
Heck, there's ads that run on TV all the time for DraftKings or whoever it is.
That is technically gambling on sports, but it's not really. it's not really gambling on sports. The fact that
You put money in and you
we're
can take
sitting
money
here
back.
watching Cleveland and Boston in the fourth quarter. You could, if gambling were legal throughout the United States, you could open your phone, open an app, and you could bet on how many free throws the Celtics will take the rest of the game. So does that open up a whole new level of question marks for the legitimacy of the league?
You can do that in Nevada right now.
Right, but in Nevada you have to actually go into the casinos, and it makes it harder because you can't. There's no like right now there's offshore betting sites where you can go on and you can do that, but you can't really do it. I think it'll create morality problems with some people because there's no doubt that gambling affects a lot of people that struggle with that type of thing. And I agree, Joey, people are already gambling if they want to, but will it open the door for more if it's super easy to just open an app on your phone?
People struggle with smoking cigarettes. I mean, people are always struggling with something. I mean, just because one person struggles with something, why should everyone else be punished for it?
I'm with you there. That's the libertarian point of view. I'm with you 100%. But, that's a rabbit hole with, there's taxes on cigarettes.
Just move to Utah.
There's things going on. I think one thing that people aren't talking about is that I think it might kill fantasy sports. If it becomes legal throughout the United States, because who cares about your $20 pool when you have $20 on a 6-point line in a football game? It really takes away from, I think, a lot of the fantasy sports, and I think that you might see a decrease in fantasy sports, but I think the NFL and the NBA and the major leagues will be okay with it because it's projected to double the revenues of these teams. So,
yeah, they'll be okay with it. I mean, for on that point about fantasy, from my perspective, someone that doesn't gamble, I love fantasy. I'm not in it to win money. I'm in it for bragging rights, and Joey and I are in the same league, and we love our league because it's just an opportunity to make fun of each other in our league, and we have this ongoing text thread, and it's all based on our fantasy football league that we have. Now, we talk year round. It obviously ramps up when football season comes, and so for someone like me, fantasy football is my gambling. That kind of feeds that itch where, whether it's an app on your phone or going to Vegas, either way, I'm not going to do it. It's just not in my personality. I'm not going to knock anybody that does. It's just not me. Fantasy football for me will still be very relevant. And I think that's the case for most people that really enjoy that. I mean, there's some people that are in like 8 and 12 and 20 leagues. I mean, for them, it's a whole science. I don't know how it's going to affect them, but just for the lay fan and the I think that are doing it with their friends, their buddies, it'll stay the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think fantasy is way too much fun for it not to, but the idea behind fantasy is why I think that the sports betting overall is going to be good for all sports. You have your teams that you follow, and you're into those. Maybe you're super into those. But if you've got something on the line for a team you normally don't follow, you're way more into that game. It makes it more exciting. And I think if you can throw a $5 wager, a $10 wager on something, say you're in Tampa and you're going to a baseball game where you'd never be interested, if you can walk up, throw $5 on the game, it's going to make it more entertaining. It's going to make it more fun. You can talk trash to your buddy. But to me, I look at from a state standpoint, I need to make it a little bit smaller than the whole United States. I really don't think it'll pass here. If it does, it's going to be a long time. But if it does, ideally, I would like to see them maybe take the proceeds from that, the taxing of it, however they can do it, and actually maybe put that to like state-funded healthcare. Mm-hmm. Like use that towards a good, like maybe like what the lottery was supposed to do with education, but actually make that work for the state in some way.
I think it's going to be interesting, and I haven't heard anybody talk about this, is are they going to have heightened security at games now? Because here's what I picture. Someone bets on the game that they are attending. They've had a few too many drinks. At the last second, they lose. Now they're down an extra 100, 200, however much they chose to bet on the game, and they're mad, and now they want to fight. And I can see stuff like that happening. You lose money, you want to take it out on somebody or something. So that's a minor detail, but I do wonder, like what is the effect of the game day experience going to be like with people around you betting money on the game that you're watching?
Well, if you compare it to like European soccer, which again, they've done that for decades. I mean, literally you walk up, they have a window by where you buy your tickets and you can bet on anything. You can bet on the game, the winner, who scores first, what minute the first goal is scored in. And yeah, it makes it really cool, but it also does have that hooligan atmosphere of like, yeah, I've got a lot of money on this game. My team lost. I don't like you. And we're fighting. So it definitely, it makes it more intense. Absolutely.
I think that'll bring definitely a new element to the game. I'd say the people that are betting hundreds and 200s on games, though, are currently doing it.
Yeah, that's
people
true.
that are that deep in aren't going to just start doing that because it's easier. I think people that are that deep in are going to be already in it with offshore accounts and things like that. You know, whether it be
Or Jimmy down the street who's going to break your kneecaps if you don't pay him.
Yeah,
I mean, where's the stress in that?
And
right?
and that's a good argument that's been made is when you go through these bookies, these illegal bookies, there's not a lot of cash involved. It's more credit. So they will extend you credit on you. And so you could go in deep 20,000 to a bookie on credit who's going to, like Joey said, break your kneecaps, versus if it were legal, you can only get out what you put in. So you can't go in as deep a debt through these legitimate sites.
And not only that, none of that tax revenue is coming back to us. I mean, there's zero of that. To me, that's the biggest thing out of all of it. Like, if it's already happening, let's get the tax money for it.
So what is the biggest issue? Because Robert brings up a good point. And with any of these things that could bring in tax revenue, there's politics and lobbyists and money involved with these things that's preventing it from happening.
Well, you just nailed the biggest issue right there.
And specifically in the state of Florida, those things are the Seminole tribes and Disney in the state of Florida.
Boo.
There's currently in
You
November.
don't like Seminole tribes, Robert?
Are you anti-Native American?
Oh, that's. I thought we were talking about FSU.
Robert, I'm 1/16 Cherokee man.
So for those of you that live in Florida and that are over the age of 18, you'll be able to vote on Amendment 3 in November. And what that's going to do is that's an amendment that was put together by the No Casinos organization. And that would basically mean that the state of Florida would have to vote on any new casinos that were being started in the state of Florida. And in that amendment, it extended to any gaming that's added, quote, in the future, which most people expect to be this sports gambling. Interestingly enough, behind that Amendment 3 campaign is $16 million in funding from Disney and the Seminole tribe.
How funny. No casino bill backed by your local casino.
Exactly. Well, I mean, obviously what that would do is that would make it very difficult for any new casinos or any kind of, quote, gaming to be added to the state of Florida without this cumbersome red tape vote, which would obviously benefit these tourist attractions like Disney and the Hard Rocks and things like that.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, let's say that I want to open up Joe's Sportsbook, and it's basically whatever, a window, a shack, somewhere where you can come and place bets on any sporting event. That's going to be considered a casino under that rule and not going to be allowed.
Well, it would be allowed, but you would have to get voted by Florida legislature to get it approved, which could take years. I mean, the Florida legislature doesn't even meet again until March 2019. So for gambling to even become legal in the state of Florida, it doesn't even get voted on until March 2019. So in other states like Mississippi, Nevada, New Jersey, who won the Supreme Court trial, they are expected to have this legal sports betting by the time the NFL season starts, where Florida is not even eligible for a vote until March of next year. So it's just, interesting to look at the different politics that happen from each state. And also another interesting tidbit on this is Rick Scott, his administration, who's the governor of Florida, if you don't know, sealed an agreement with the Seminole tribe last month that pays them $20 million a month from the Seminole tribe to the state of Florida for basically not allowing any more casinos to open up. So it's in the Seminole tribe's best interest to pay the state of Florida $20 million a month to not open up new casinos, which is an amazing amount of
They've
money.
got that kind of cheddar is the scary part about
That
it.
is crazy.
The interesting
Slot machines.
The interesting one is when
a
all
lot of
these
nickels.
the interesting one is when all these other states start getting the legalized gambling going on. You see all the revenue coming in for the stadiums, for the sports teams. Look, I don't think it's going to happen in Florida for quite some time. We have it set up where it's near impossible to get new laws voted in. You have to have a 60% vote yes just to get something changed for then our government to then just hold off for a while longer and then kind of renegotiate it. So that's going to be hard.
But it was like that in New Jersey. New Jersey has
Yeah,
the
it's
same
true.
laws
It's
where
true,
they
but-
have to have 60% of their voters, and they were the first state to vote on the legalization of sports betting.
Yeah, I agree. Well, where I was going with that, though, is that once this starts happening and you see these NFL, NBA, NHL, whatever it is, major sports companies start making money in there off of the sports betting and everything, you're going to end up seeing, I mean, we have 3 NFL teams, we have 2 hockey teams, we have 2 MLB teams. I mean, then all the other soccer that's going on. I mean, we have so many major sports teams in Florida. All those guys are going to get together and be like, no, we got to do something. I mean, that's what it's going to take, though. It's going to take them funding the opposition while Seminole and Disney are funding the rest of it. So
Well, that's a great point. And what I didn't think about earlier, which I wish I would have looked into, is with it not being federally criminalized anymore, these other 4 or 5 states that are going to have it immediately, who's to say that I can't bet in New Jersey or in Nevada now or in other places that are allowing it and still make that a legal bet and get paid out on it? It's just Florida's not getting that tax revenue.
That's a very interesting topic of interstate commerce, which then goes to the federal government, which now has no law on it.
Exactly.
So I think this is just an unprecedented time. I think your best bet is just getting a P.O. box in Georgia. That would be your best bet.
No
But-
pun intended.
hey,
To me, in all of it, the big head scratch for me is Disney's role in it, because I consider myself more than a Disney novice.
I would say Disney cray-cray.
My family, we've been a few times, and there is no lack of interest from Disney, regardless of whether there's going to be sports betting going on. Especially, they're about to open Toy Story Land in the middle of this summer, the end of June.
I'm going to bet they aren't.
And that is just like the opening act to what's going to be happening next year when they open Star Wars Land in a Star Wars hotel. I'm telling you, that place is going to be packed to the rafters when that part of Hollywood Studios opens, to the point where we've already decided we're not going for like a solid year, because it's just going to be so many people there. Whether we do or not is a different story. But listen, Disney can find $16 million in their couch cushions. They are not going to be hurting from this. I don't know. Why they're concerned about this is almost more interesting to me than the actual subject itself, if that makes any sense. Because it just seems like I just don't see how this affects their revenue stream at all.
Well, 2 things jumped out at me on that. To start with, I had to go back to their cruise ships, because honestly, I mean, like, the Disney cruise ships for kids are beyond anything else out there. They're fantastic, but they don't allow gambling.
Right.
Whereas all the other cruise ships do. So I have to think from a cruise ship standpoint that they've seen a hit from that. Like, they that's what they're battling against, and they don't want that to happen with anything else that they do as far as any kind of tourism going away from them. So I would think that to start with. But then the second thing is they own ESPN.
Exactly.
So, I mean, if all sports become more popular because people can bet on them, they're going to benefit from that because they own ESPN. So I agree, man. I'd really love to see somebody who's smarter than me come with a breakout on that and explain that situation, because it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No,
well,
it
that's
doesn't.
actually an interesting point, too, because I actually, for whatever reason, it didn't come through my mind. I'm thinking of just casinos popping up, but Universal's right around the corner. What if Universal drops a large casino on their property? Well, now not only do you have
Universal
that,
hardly has any land left. I mean, that's the difference. That's a big difference between Universal and
yeah, but
it would be the Nickelodeon casino, I think.
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. But I
Nickel-
mean, regardless, I mean, if they came up with land or something like that, I mean, they drop that on there. Well, even though they're not going to be taking a big hit from Universal, well, now they have the roller coaster allure, but then they also have the gambling side of it too.
to me, you're just it's 2 different markets. You're Disney is family friendly, and sports betting is not. Not to say that family men and women wouldn't bet. I'm not saying that, but I just
It draws different crowds, absolutely.
Yeah, it does.
Completely agree.
But you also like Disney. But what about the family where 2 of the people in the family don't like Disney, but the other ones do? But then this place has roller coasters, and they have a casino for the rest of them to do.
I mean, I don't think it is 2 different markets, but I think those markets are equally large. Like,
Right.
in this group, yes, doesn't make sense to us, but I think 50% of the people out there would want gambling to be part of whatever they do, even though they have kids. Whereas to us, yeah, hey, who cares?
Well, if that's the case, let's bet on like how long the lines are on Space Mountain. And
4
can we
hours,
get there?
guaranteed.
Why not, right?
Can we get in sooner?
The wait in line to ride ratio.
The over under 45 minutes.
Now I'm going to fight as soon as this goes over 2 hours and 30 minutes, man, because I lost that too.
I mean, I don't know. My first thought when I saw Disney was involved at $16 million was the fact that Florida's chief export would be tourism, and if there was any kind of competition for tourism in the state of Florida, that would hurt them. And at $16 million, like James said, that's nothing to them. And if they lose a couple thousand people to Jacksonville, who has the best sports betting casinos or sports betting venues in the state, that's going to hurt them in the long run. So they're trying to protect their interests in the entire state with big cities like Miami, Tampa, who they already compete with the Seminole Hard Rocks and all that territory. Orlando, a big city that's coming up. Pensacola, all those big cities, if they're fighting with them now for tourism, that's not in their best interest because they have the entire state and their entire state export of tourism pretty much on lock right now.
Mm-hmm. It's just, to me, Disney is just so above the fray in this. They own everything. They own Star Wars. They own Marvel. They own ESPN. They just have their Pixar, all these things that they partner with and work with. It just, I don't know. It's surprising to me that they would be this concerned.
Well, I think another thing to think about, though, is the international component of it. I mean, a lot of Disney's revenue comes from foreign travelers coming to go to Disney and come to America for 2 weeks on holiday. The European culture and the international culture on gambling is way different than ours. I mean, it's way more acceptable there. It's way more partaken in. So maybe that's part of the concern, is they don't want to lose those international travelers to places that would have gambling, whereas they've put this hard line on, we're not doing that at Disney.
Yeah, and it's not like they're going to lose them altogether, but it might be go from them going there for 5 days down to we're only going to go there to 2 to 3 days now.
Sure.
So, the interesting thing, though, Disney could, if they wanted, build a casino. They have so
absolutely.
much property.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
ridiculous.
It kind of makes you wonder why they've drawn that line. I mean,
I know the whole thing is very confusing.
I mean, they serve alcohol in most of the parks. I mean, why?
They used to have that line there, but they've completely laxed on that.
Yeah, so,
cocaine in some of the parks too.
Yeah,
I mean, they're getting loosey goosey.
Hey, maybe the Disney coaches just know something that we don't know.
Maybe so.
Very possible.
Maybe this betting for them is the Moncrief or the Blair Brown of Disney.
They have the numbers crunched to where it's in their best interest. Like James said, we don't know, but there is an interest there somewhere.
I will be willing to bet that they have smarter people on this than the four of us.
Yeah.
If this does get passed, the Lot J renderings do get a lot more interesting now, though.
That's true. Guarantee there will be a sport book in there if it's possible.
Joey's McCardell sports book.
Hey, if I can get him to back me, absolutely. Put it out there right now, Keenan.
All right, well, that wraps up our final segment of episode 11 of Another Jags podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Again, please, if you have not followed us yet on social media, make sure to do it. We're on Twitter at Another Jags Pod and Instagram and Facebook at Another Jags Podcast. Send us your questions for next week's podcast. Remember, we are the #1 off-season Jags podcast, so if you have a question that you want answered or you want us to talk about, obviously our expertise is very valued. So we will give you our opinion on everything from rookie free agents to the draft to Disney. That's what we're here. We're just well-rounded players here. So thank you again for listening, and we will see you guys next week. Make sure you follow us on Twitter because we're going to have some giveaways of some new merchandise that we'll be getting. We want to give it to you guys. So make sure to hit us up on Twitter, send us your questions, and we'll see you next week. And as always, go Jags.